One of the fundamental principles of medicine is to do no harm. That means when we're considering therapies, interventions, procedures, trying to do good for our patients, we have to place an even greater consideration and emphasis on the risks and possibility to do harm. This is especially important for therapies or interventions that provide only marginal benefit or unproven benefit. But wait, I thought this video was about misting. Hello plant friends. If you're new to this channel, my name is Jimmy. I'm a doctor and tropical plant enthusiast in LA. I make videos about my collection, other people's collection, and general plant care. In this episode, we'll be talking about misting. Should you mist or should you not mist your tropical plants? I know that there are usually two camps on this issue. There are the misters and the misses, the non-misters. There are some people that love misting. They do it pretty regularly and they think it's great for their plants. And then there are other people that never mist and they think it's either harmful to their plants or a waste of time. Misting is good for plants. No, misting isn't. Are you sure? Well, so if we apply the medical principle of do no harm, we first have to consider the benefits or potential benefits of misting, and then place an even greater emphasis and consideration for the possible harms. If you ask people who are pro-misters why they mist, the most common answer is that misting increases humidity. So the thought is that misting adds moisture on the plants, and as that moisture evaporates, it adds to the surrounding humidity. So let's imagine that we're in this enclosed room where the temperature is high and the humidity is 0. Okay, we can add some bright indirect light in there because we all love that. So in this room where the temperature is high but the humidity is 0, if we mist, because the humidity is so low, the water and moisture that we add through the misting is going to evaporate really quickly and add to the overall humidity. We'll start at 0, and let's say that even if you add to the humidity, 5% or 10%, that's a pretty big deal when your humidity is 0. That's a 500% or 1,000% increase in humidity. If you're in that room with 0 humidity or very low humidity, misting is beneficial. But let's just say that you're still in that room and you're misting, and the humidity is climbing. And for somehow you got to 80 or 90% humidity. So now, even though the temperature is high, there's so much humidity in the air that when you mist, the moisture and the water droplets are not going to evaporate that much because the air is almost essentially saturated with water moisture. When you're misting in an environment with, let's say, 80 or 90% humidity, even if you're misting a ton, you may raise the humidity percentage by 1, 2, 3, or 4%. But what is 1, 2, 3, 4% in relation to 80 or 90%? It's not that much. So in an environment where the humidity is already high, you're going to get much less bang for your buck or bang for your time. So the benefits of misting really depends on your environment. If you have low or very low humidity, misting has more potential to benefit you in terms of humidity. And if you're in a place that already has high humidity, misting will probably not give you that much benefit. So before we move to the potential harm, if you've had enough of these pretentious doctor guides to plant stuff, put a comment down below, but also like and subscribe because it helps out a lot. Thanks. So now let's move on to the potential harms of misting. So what are the potential harms of misting? The harm is fungal and bacterial overgrowth.
Fungal and bacterial overgrowth.
A medical example, super easy, diaper rash. the diaper area in a baby, right? It's always covered up, so that area tends to get moist and damp and diaper rash. So for our plants, especially indoor plants where air circulation may not be the best, we have a high risk of moist, damp areas sort of just hanging there for an extended period of time, allowing bacteria and fungus to grow. So here I'm sharing some recent leaf damage from misting one of my plants. I think this is a Gloriosum or Verrucosum crossed with Melanochisum hybrid. It's a philodendron. I find that these philodendrons with velvety leaves, there are several of them, I find that their leaves are especially sensitive to bacterial and fungal overgrowth. The damage from misting usually is towards the outer edges of the plant, and this is because that's usually where the water droplets kind of condense and it can linger along those edges. So the reason why I misted this particular time was because I'm currently fighting a bug infestation. So part of my regimen is spraying with an insecticide. I do a pretty heavy spraying / misting, and the water just did not evaporate fast enough, so you can see the damage on the plants. So at this time, you probably have two questions. So the first question is, well, Jimmy, a lot of people mist their plants, and usually it's fine. Yeah, usually it is fine. I think you have to be mindful that a lot of these indoor plants are not tropical plants. Some plants simply are more resistant, or at least the leaves of some plants are simply more resistant to bacterial and fungal overgrowth. That means that even though there's a lot of bacteria or a lot of fungus on the leaves, it doesn't penetrate the leaves. The Calathea orbifolia is very well known to be very nitpicky with humidity requirements. So this is Orby. I've had him for about 6 months. He benefits a lot from misting. So he was doing really well when I was misting him about twice a day. I don't mist him as often as I used to just because I've been busy. And then I've noticed that when I stop, you start getting browning at the end of the tips. Whenever I do mist pretty heavily. So you can see that there are some browning at the tips, but that's not really what I wanted to show you guys. I sort of want to show you guys these areas right here. These areas are more indicative of water and moisture just being retained on the leaves for too long. There's definitely a fine balance on how much and how regularly to mist him to prevent the brown edges, but also not get into trouble with these spots that are most likely due to bacteria or fungal infection from being too moist. So your second question is probably, but Jimmy, these tropical plants that we're talking about were originally in the tropics, right? In rainforests where the humidity is high and it rains really often, multiple times a day. So aren't the leaves in their natural environment of these plants, aren't the leaves almost always wet? And then why don't we get problems there? Well, the answer to that is air circulation. There is a lot of air circulation in the tropics, in the rainforests, that moves around the water. Even though the leaves are wet, the wind, right? The air circulation is constantly moving that around. So even though the bacteria and fungi have a very good environment for growth, it's always being moved around. So you don't get that bacteria or fungus that's just sitting on your leaves damaging it, right? This is very different when we're talking about an indoor environment where a lot of people don't have the same amount of circulation. Imagine if you're in a very dry place and you want to keep your humidity on the higher side. How do you do that? You do that with humidifiers or however you do it, but you generally have to keep the windows closed, right? To contain all that moisture or that humidity. And usually there's a deficiency in air circulation. So that's really the reason why in the tropics the plants can stay wet pretty much all the time, and in your place you can't. My place, I can't. It doesn't work. So for me, my ambient humidity outside is about 60 to 70%. I don't do much humidity augmentation. I don't have my humidifiers on. So I have my windows open and I have my ceiling fan on whenever I remember. I try to keep my air circulated well, but even then I find that, whenever I mist, I tend to run into trouble more often than not. So when I mist my plants, I usually just mist the aerial roots. I do this because I feel like it's good to give them some moisture and some water through the aerial roots, and then that way I can leave their pots and their ground roots on the drier side to prevent root rot. I think it's perfectly fine to mist regularly and mist heavily if you have the proper air circulation. That is your safety net, right? That's your safety barrier. So the more you mist, the more you need to focus or think about your air circulation, whether that means opening a lot of windows or having a lot of fans or strategically placed fans around your place. If you're misting in the morning and you can still see water droplets by dinner time, you need to change your routine. You're either misting too much or your air circulation isn't enough. So you either have to improve the air circulation or mist less. So if you live in a place with low humidity, good air circulation, and have plants that have hardy leaves that are resistant to bacterial or fungal growth, probably misting will give you more benefit than risks. But if you live in a place where the humidity is already pretty high and your air circulation is low and you have plants with generally sensitive leaves, then I would probably advise you against misting, because probably the risks of harm for misting probably outweighs the benefits that you would get from it. If you're really worried about humidity, just get a humidifier, or 2, or 3. The humidifiers do a much, much better job at increasing your humidity. Alright guys, I hope this episode was helpful. I really hope this gave you some things to consider and think about to make the right decision regarding misting for you and your plants. There's a couple other videos and links and other stuff that I made. Hope you guys enjoy that content too. Till next time, happy planting!